welcome to the Luke and Shavonne show.
Chatting about life.
All right, my name is Luke Mazurek, and I'm recording from the great state of California. Today is a fun topic. We're going to discuss dating from the married perspective and the single perspective. So, Siobhan, here I'll start us off here. So, I'll
Okay,
be honest,
yes.
I haven't been single and dated anybody in almost 2 decades. I got married in 2006, and from what I hear, things have changed a lot since I was
Dramatically.
out there. Yeah. So I did a little bit of homework. I'll read off here. So I hear when I was single, not too many people were meeting people online. People would go to clubs, and that was always exciting. You'd see somebody, they might look at you, you'd be happy, and go maybe you'd talk to them
Send
and
a wink.
have fun, dance. Yeah, you do stuff like that, and it was kind of exciting. It also took for us men, it took a lot of courage to like approach a young lady, so you had to build up your confidence. That's why a lot of men would drink usually before they would go say hi or whatever. So that was the kind of world that I grew up in. But I talked to a lot of people that are single in their 40s. A couple of my good friends are single, and it seems like everybody's using these dating apps. So I did some homework. I was just kind of curious. I was thinking, I wonder what the most successful dating apps are. And I came across an article in Forbes where they rank the top seven dating apps.
Okay.
The number one is eHarmony. Number two is Date My Age. Sounds nice. Number three, Dating.com. Number four, Match.com. Number five, Our Time. Number six, Stir. And then seven, this is for you, Siobhan, Black People Meet. Are you familiar with any of these apps?
Okay, so Luke, I hate to break it down. There are over 20 plus dating apps right now.
Oh, wow.
And yes, there is a gauntlet. And it's funny that they're like the most popular ones, but there's also a lot of other ones. There's Tinder, Grinder, Humble, Bumble.
Oh,
There's a ton. There's Black People Meet, there's interracial dating. There are so many apps out there. And yes, I've
wow.
had some friends that have gone on Black Planet or Black People Meet, and then I've gone on interracial dating sites. And then there's Plenty of Fish, where that's a local to where you are. Um, Tinder, everybody seems to be on Tinder. You swipe left, swipe right. Hinge, Bumble. Bumble is actually created by women for women to be a little bit, more secure,
Okay.
finding quality people. So there
Mhm.
is a ton, and I have been on a ton. There's Zook. I think that's how you pronounce it. There's OK Cupid. Just so many more than what that Forbes suggests. Have dates is amazing to me because there were so many apps that I found looking up, dating apps where we just think
Mhm.
and what I found is that there's apps specifically for what you're looking for. And when I say that, like
Mhm.
women looking for certain men, and then Plenty of Fish, where they say, there are plenty of fish in the sea. Go out there and
Mhm.
cast your anchor, blah, blah, blah. Tinder, which are,
Mhm.
I guess, for everybody. And then Hinge, I think it's for the younger people. I want to say maybe 30 and younger. There's the
Okay.
Grinder for the gay people. So there's so many dating
Yeah.
apps out there that it's crazy. I did a few in the past, and I'll be honest, Luke, like you said, the old school way of dating, you know a friend who knows a friend, you go out on
Mhm.
a blind date and you hook up, and that's how it um,
Mhm.
is gone now. And
Yeah.
that's how people meet through dating sites. But I kind
Yeah.
of have been on you know, I'm over it. I'll be honest, I'm over it.
Yeah.
So,
Do you have
with
a favorite dating app that you thought was very helpful?
absolutely not.
Oh, okay.
Nope, not
That's
one. Not
that's
one.
good to know.
It's because like you were saying, I also looked up and it said only I think it was less than 10% of the people that you meet through these dating sites become a long-term investment as far as a relationship that propels into marriage. So it just seems like it's
Okay.
date who you can when you can for a certain amount of time
Yeah.
and then on to the next.
So why are these things growing? Do you think people just have such busy lives at our age that this is an easy way to just quickly meet somebody or
I think it has a lot to do with demographics because
okay.
when we lived in Colorado, Colorado is very small. But I'll just give an
Mm,
example of where I live now in Georgia. Georgia is huge.
mhm.
So when you meet somebody, say they live in Peachtree City, but they
Yeah.
meet someone in Austell, Georgia. I'm just giving an example. That's an hour drive away from each other.
Yeah.
Also, like in New York, if you're not in the same borough, it's crazy. Someone in Manhattan is
Yeah.
not going to date somebody in Queens because that's you know, it could be a 90-minute subway trip. So I think it's more of
Yeah.
convenience that people are using these apps. So they because you can, and that's another thing. When you're on these apps, you can filter it. You can
Yeah.
filter down to, your zip code or your city, and you're able to see who's available.
Now, I
So,
won't say names, but I've heard some horror stories about these apps, particularly from female friends who say there's men out there that will send photos they don't really want. I'll just say that, and they
yes,
just they have just stories of not really meeting, very motivated, interesting males. It's usually somebody. I don't know how to describe somebody that they
they're
regret
creeps, they're
meeting.
jerks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I didn't want to be mean, but uh,
No, you're
have
fine,
you
and
had
I'll
any
be mean because I
experiences
don't I
like
don't hesitate. I have,
that?
Luke. I have had experience.
Okay.
I don't know why, and it's something that happens with the male testosterone, that XY chromosome that you guys have, that we as
Yeah.
XX chromosomes don't have.
Mhm.
Why men choose to send pictures of their appendage to women? I
Yeah. Yeah.
don't understand it, and I don't know why, because it's not pretty
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
it's nothing that is warranted. I have never met
Hmm.
any female in my repertoire of friends that span the gauntlet of the nation that have ever asked to say, okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say this word, and I know it's a little risque, but nobody asked for a dick pic. I don't want that. Why?
Yeah.
I don't want
Yeah.
to see your
Okay.
appendage. It's just not cute, and I wish men
Yeah.
nationwide, worldwide, everywhere
Hmm.
don't do that. It's not cute. It's
Yeah.
really not. And so
Yeah.
I think when they do that, it shuts down. It's like, okay, on to the
Yeah.
next one, because this is not
Yeah.
something I wanted. And it's just gross. It's disgusting. So
Yeah.
how is it
But
with dating your wife? Don't you think that married people need to date just as much as single people need to date?
oh yeah, definitely. Um, so yeah, I have a busy, very demanding career,
Hmm.
and then I have three kids who also require a lot of time. So the wife and I, really, the biggest thing is that we have to be intentional. And then
Okay.
when we go out on dates, we gotta make sure, and it's hard to do when you have kids and they absorb your life. We have
Right.
to make sure that we talk to each other about each other, that the whole conversation and everything we discuss isn't just all about the kids. Because one day those kids move out, and I know people in this boat, and you become empty nesters, and you don't want to look at your spouse and see a stranger because you've neglected them for years and everything was about the kids. So yeah, I encourage married couples when you go out, make it about your spouse. Ask them how they're doing. Share some stuff that you're going through. Sometimes even I've been married nearly 20 years, but sometimes I'll still ask Crystal about like things about her childhood or things that she experienced, and I'm always learning new stuff about her. It makes helps me appreciate her a lot more too, and yeah, you need those dates so you can do that. So there's not the kids distracting you and everything. So that's what I encourage. I encourage people to be intentional with that if you're married. Yeah.
And speaking of that, when you have careers and kids and
Mhm.
all that, how do you schedule the time to
Um,
go out
a
on
lot of
dates?
times, yeah, sometimes it changes with. So as I mentioned last episode, I'm in the army, so sometimes I get these random days off. So like with my current job, I'll work like 20 days in a row, and then I'll get like a 4 day
Mm,
weekend, to compensate for that.
wow.
So the kids will be in school, so typically I'll say, okay, we're gonna go out to lunch, we'll go out on a walk, and it's nice because it's not a 1 hour date. We have almost the whole day together. And
Oh, that's sweet.
yeah, yeah. So, and it was really nice when I was stationed in Italy. They would give
Mm.
us some half days on Fridays occasionally, and
Oh.
just being in a foreign country and discovering new Italian restaurants every Friday. It was so fun going through that adventure with her,
Would you
and I
go on
missed it. I get
gondola
nostalgic about it.
rides?
All. I'm sorry.
Would you take her on gondola rides? The gondolas
Oh
in
yeah,
Italy? See,
yeah, yeah.
that's
We would
so
always
cool.
we try to do something different, something exciting. Even out here, we'll try to do something, just out of the blue, something we don't usually get to do with the kids. Sometimes something as silly as just watching a movie you can't watch when the kids are,
Right.
we'll do things like that. Yeah, just to kind of build that relationship, and it's nice because it gives me something to look forward to, and it keeps the marriage exciting. So I
And
highly
fresh.
encourage it. Yes, yes,
That's
exactly.
awesome.
Um, so one of the things I was gonna bring up, and this isn't advice or anything, it's an observation,
Okay.
because I've went through this. I would say to anybody watching, if you're single, for instance, I would say, yeah, I would ask yourself, why date? Why do I want to date to begin with? What's the reason for it? Because I was this was something while we prepped for the show I thought about too, and I know a lot of
Right.
people. And you've told me this too. We know people who have gotten divorced or just for whatever reason found
Oh,
themselves
yeah.
single, and they just jump like immediately right into another
Not even
relationship.
a year
So
goes by. Yeah. And they're already
yeah,
married or shacked up with somebody. Yes.
yeah,
I
and
think
I think it's easy to
that's
do that
weird.
because yeah, yeah. Like people get lonely, especially when you've been married and you're used to being with somebody. People get lonely, and there's no judgment on my part because I think I can relate to this a lot. I'm in the army. I'm
Okay.
traveling a lot. I'm away from family a lot, and I'll admit it. I
Mm.
turn into a big wimp after like a day of being away from the wife and kids. I start missing them. Start getting a little bit depressed. So I know how
Right.
tempting that could be. Yeah, to just jump right into a relationship. So that's why I just encourage anybody that's watching that's single and trying to date. Like, what do you want to get out of dating? Is it just to escape loneliness, or do you want to find marriage, or what's your whole
Well,
reason
when I
for
was
getting?
looking at it, it was it's like the emotional aspects of living up to expectations. A lot of
Yeah,
times living up to expectations of what people feel that you should be doing at a certain age, unfortunately. And
yeah,
now we've kind of been breaking those stereotypes over the last decade or two where it's like it's
mhm,
okay if you're a single woman. You don't have to get married and have kids if that's not your claim to fame. So I
yeah,
think sometimes people are okay with being by themselves. And then I also looked and
yeah,
it says when the single people don't like rejection. They feel,
mhm,
you go on so many dates and you get rejected. It's like, well, after a while, you're like, so you're just like, you know what? I'm not going to even try anymore. And you just don't feel up to it. And
yeah,
also with that is the fear of rejection is after a while, the loneliness aspect does come into
yeah,
play. So it
yeah,
seems as if sometimes being single can be a good thing because I've always said, I'm going to be happy and fabulous with or without a man. That's
yeah.
just how I
That's
am.
awesome.
But
Yeah,
sometimes the loneliness does get to you and even though you might have 500 friends and they call and
yeah,
you still go through loneliness and that's a period. So there's so many emotional aspects to
hmm,
dating that sometimes you just don't want to deal with that stuff.
yeah.
What would you say is something that you look forward to as being a married couple that dates? What is something you look forward to with your mate?
Oh, you mean actually on the dates or
Or just period, just in general?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I look forward to that time. Crystal is always willing to do to try
Right.
different things, like especially in Italy, she was willing to try different restaurants.
Make the
We
dates.
go out
Right.
on the lake. Yeah, yeah. So it's for me, it's very exciting just planning a date because I hope she doesn't get mad, but she's the type of person where if it's a bad date, she'll tell me, but if I
Right.
plan something and she's having fun and she's laughing and I'm like, man, I did a good job and it helps me like feel good.
The reason that I asked you about Crystal because you guys do,
Mhm.
seem to date, and I date when you're married, and I have a few friends that are married and do the same thing, and I think that's wonderful because
Yeah.
it might lead to not being divorced because I saw that you said 50% of marriages end in divorce. And I remember you're
Yeah.
saying that if you don't date and get to know your mate when your kids do get grown and they leave the home, you don't want to
Hmm.
be next to a stranger. You want to be next to, your mate, your love, your friend.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's
Yeah.
really important as well.
That was a stat. There was a couple stats I thought were interesting, but yeah, in the U.S., just about 50% of couples that marry and end in divorce, according to Chat GPT. And I also
Mm-hmm.
looked up. I was curious, and I assumed that the number would be higher. I looked up my own field, the Army and just military
Mm.
service in general. I was
Military.
surprised
Hmm.
the divorce rate is a lot lower. I want to say it was around 23% or something, which I found
Really?
a bit shocking because I seem to meet a lot of divorced soldiers,
Right.
but that's
Right.
according to AI. AI I know could be wrong sometimes, but according to what I looked up, and I can see some real like pros to that because when you're moving, in my case, I move every 2 to 3 years. All you have
Right.
is your spouse. You get to a new duty station, you don't know anybody. All you have is your spouse. So you got to either cling to each other to survive or accept failure and not survive. But yeah, there's a real opportunity to really kind of bond with your wife and your kids because each other is all you have, until you start meeting people and start going to work and school and all that stuff. But a lot of times we'll show up in the summer and first 2 months. We won't be in kids won't be in school. We won't have things going on. A lot of people will be gone, and it'll take us a while before we start feeling like we're part of the community. So it's just us. So yeah, there's some opportunity there to bond, and there's some opportunity where there's stress and things don't go well. But I think it's made us stronger. So in that regard, I could see maybe why the divorce rate might be a little bit lower. One of the
In the
things that I was
military.
going to talk about, yeah, yeah. One of the things I was going to talk about because I really think it's a trade off thing. So when you're single, you do have freedom. You don't have to like whenever there's uh, if I have like time or whatever, or if I want to do something that's my interest, but I know nobody in the family's into it. You just have to like sacrifice that
Right.
and not. So there's that constant. What do you call it? Just trying to convince people to go along with what you want to do and stuff like that.
They're
That
like, nah,
constant
Dad, we're
persuasion.
good. We're good,
Yeah,
Dad.
yeah.
You go do that.
So when you're single, what I would highly encourage is like enjoy that time, though. Enjoy that, embrace that season of freedom, because when you get married, and I'll give you kind of the real deal, and this is straight from Scripture. So in Genesis 2:24, it describes when a man will leave his parents and unite with a woman, and
Hmm.
the two
Will
become one
become
flesh.
one. Hmm. You're
So,
right.
what does that mean? What does that mean for your spouse and yourself to become one flesh? What I think it means is you truly become one person, and by that I mean you get to know this person so well. You know them almost better than yourselves. So when you get
Wow.
married, like Crystal knows my deepest darkest secrets, weaknesses, all that stuff. And when you get married, that's a bit scary because somebody could really use that against you if they get mad at you.
Yeah.
They know your vulnerabilities, they know what sets you off, and they could truly use that against you. So if you're dating for marriage, consider that. Consider that you're not. I often say dating's a sham because you go and you don't typically show up telling people all the bad things about you.
Right.
You still, it's like you're making a sale or whatever. You're trying to advertise what's
Right.
great about you. And what I recommend, if you're our age and you're single and you're dating, I would like bring up the bad stuff right away, and you might save yourself some time because we have busy lives. You know, somebody might not want to
Luke.
stick around when they hear your bad news and your
You're like,
garbage. You know,
I have
so
12 kids, I'm an alcoholic, and I'm a manic depressant. You're like, just,
exactly.
and I'm in bankruptcy. You're just lay it all out on the table
Lay it
from the
all out
jump.
there. Yep, yep. Because then
Um,
if they still stay by you, they might be worth it. They might be worth your time. But if
right,
they're not willing to stay with you during the hard times, they're probably not worth it. You know.
and it's true what you say. When you first start dating, of course, they're going to give you all the flowery details, and I'm this, and I'm that, and I'm blah, and blah. And
Yeah.
you have to be careful because people aren't forthcoming and aren't truthful. Where
Yeah.
being married and because once you date, I think you, like you said, you do get to know that person and you get to know their ins and outs and their secrets and this and that. But if
Yeah.
it's deceitful from the jump, you know, it's not going to lead to marriage. It's going to
Yeah.
lead to a breakup. Uh,
Yeah.
and that's, people deceive, and that is a huge thing. You don't want to be scammed or catfished, and that happens a
Yeah.
lot when you're dating because
Yeah.
people always want to show the best part of them and the best side of them. They don't want to
Yeah.
show the negative. And see, it's different in our age range because we're older. And I know it's, when you're in your 20s and 30s, you're gallivanting and having a great, great time and getting to know
Yeah.
people. You're in college and you're just starting your careers and this, that, and the other. And it's just
Mm-hmm.
strange. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because you can date who you want when you want and you can go anywhere and everywhere. And that's the thing about being single is
Mm-hmm.
that you aren't committed to someone yet. So you get
Yeah.
to have fun. Where when you're married, I would hope that that person would be committed toward you. What do you think about emotional cheating?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because
Uh,
even though that's not dating in the flesh, that's dating emotionally, which to me is
yeah.
sometimes more dangerous than actually being in somebody's physical presence, where when we're
Yeah.
single, we don't have to deal with that.
Yeah. I think you have to measure that a little bit. So what I would recommend, you shouldn't like I would warn against confiding in the opposite sex. If you're telling them stuff you wouldn't tell your spouse, I'd warn against that. Um, One of the things that's sometimes hard to do for when people get married is stay friends with people from the opposite sex, and which in some ways is unfortunate because you make a lot of good friends along the way. You know, when you live a long life or whatever. So that whole trust thing comes into play. But if you find yourself, and people, this is goes back to the loneliness thing. You could be in a marriage and still feel lonely if you're not connected to each other on an emotional level. And that's when I would definitely warn against reaching out to somebody. I would encourage talking to your spouse first because that's who you want to tell everything to. Like I said, that's who you want to unload all the bad things to.
The
Uh,
reason I was
yeah.
um, th- asking you about that is because remember when we were talking about apps earlier? There's actually a cheating website. I
Mm.
think it was called Ashley Madison, and Ashley
Oh,
Madison is actually
yeah,
for married couples or married
yeah,
people to find single people to cheat on. So that's why
yeah,
I was saying, it's
mm,
crazy. And when we say maybe that, that
yeah,
50% that ends in divorce, if that could be maybe one of the catalysts is
yeah,
emotional cheating and men and women falling for scams and being
yeah,
catfished out of their money and stuff like
yeah,
that. So that's why
yeah,
that's why it was so funny to me when we were looking up all of the apps. I was like, "Oh my goodness. There
yeah,
are apps
yeah,
for everything."
yeah.
Um
No, I'm aware of that one. That was actually on one of the days the wife and I had together. We watched that Netflix. series on
the
that.
the Netflix series of Ashley Madison and
Ashley
cheating on your
Madison,
spouse
yeah,
through a dating site. Oh my goodness, it's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
And I know, and I was saying the dating sites is also something that I thought of when we were talking. Remember when I we were saying it's crazy because being catfish, being scammed, but then there's also dangers to dating. Remember, I was like, oh,
mhm.
there's not only, and I looked at it, it's not only harassment, STDs, but remember when I told you about fetishes? So we'll
Oh
talk
yeah,
about fetishes in just a second, but
okay,
there's all kinds of harassment, emotional, physical, sexual, tons of harassment. So that's why I said
yeah,
when especially if you're a woman, you need to do some background checks on these people
yeah,
and make sure that they are who they say they are. Never meet them in private, meet them in public with a lot of people. Never give out your
yeah,
home address because you got to be safe. You rather be safe
yeah,
than sorry and have something happen to you because men, and I'm not trying to be mean, they're not all like this, but a lot are. And you
hmm,
have to, as a woman, protect your virtue.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's why I
I
was
agree.
saying, you need to do background checks and criminal checks and make sure what they're saying. Like you said, you go on Chat GPT, you could go on tons of websites. Some of them are free, some of them cost $3, where you can actually
Mhm.
get the ins and outs of this person and if they've had any, domestic violence or if they've been physically or sexually harassing somebody. So I think that is also very important with dating. And then also something that you don't have to worry about is STDs, sexually
Yeah,
transmitted diseases.
yeah,
That happens a lot
hmm,
with single people. You don't have to worry about that. And then I also
yeah,
looked
it's
at
nice.
isn't it?
Yeah.
You're like my sexual history is great. I don't have to worry about getting herpes or HPV. In
Yeah,
HPV, everyone's like, what is it, syphilis or gonorrhea? You don't have to worry about that.
yeah,
AIDS.
yeah,
HIV, like what? That's what I'm saying.
yeah.
Background checks, ladies, you have to do it. But what is one thing that I talked to you that I think is crazy because it did happen to me is fetishes.
Mm,
We talked about black women being on dating sites. They're the most, I guess, not attractive, and Asian men. Those are the two least attractive people on a website. But the most fetishized or fetish was Asian women
mm,
and having fetishes with Asian women. And I remember I told you there was a guy who was like, because I've dated interracially, and it was a guy that was interested in me, and I was like, oh, he's kind of cute. And the first question I asked, automatically off the bat, no qualms or equivocations, have you ever been with a black woman? And he's
mhm.
like, no, but I want to try. That's
Yeah,
it's sickening.
yeah. That's why I recommend on
I
dates, like getting all that stuff out there right from the get go, because like we're busy people, we don't have time for that. Like, yeah, just find out what these guys' motives are, like right away, and then just get to
but
step in
Luke,
if it's something.
if
Yeah.
that's the case, we'll just be single. Because
Yeah. Well, I mean,
red
in
flag,
my
abort,
opinion,
abort,
and this
abort
could
this
be
mission.
in my opinion, I think I would rather be single than be with the wrong person. So
Oh, of
I,
course.
that's when you want
Yeah,
to be picky. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
But you want to abort the mission when you see all those red flags. You're like, what?
yeah. Yeah. Now
And
I mentioned I know this might make me sound old and out of touch or whatever, but I mentioned that I haven't been single since 2000 before 2006. So this whole game, the app game, I'm very ignorant on. But I met my wife at church, so I always tell people that's where you got to meet a good woman. And I knew my wife was good right away because I had something bad happen early in our relationship. My grandfather, who's one of the, I mean, he's one of the best men I've ever known, and he's probably the biggest influence as far as how to treat a woman because he always treated my grandmother. Well, with that old school, like she enters the room, he gets up, gives her his chair, like
you
that
get all
old
the
school
feels.
manners. Yeah, he was that kind of guy, and he could fix everything. He's just like the perfect guy. when I had met Crystal early on, he had passed away. Was struggling with
Um,
bone cancer. And she just hugged me and said, "I'm going with you to the funeral." Like there was no ifs, ands, or buts. She was ready to
wow.
comfort me, and that's what I was saying about you want somebody that's going to be there with you during the bad times. If you're going to make a marriage work, and that's not. That's why I recommend not getting emotionally involved or doing the Ashley Madison or doing any of that stuff because you want somebody to build a life with. You want your kids to look at you and see something they could count on, a foundation, something that they know doing good or bad. You guys are all together. You're one team. They could count on mom and dad, and that's what I think most people want. They want a partner they can
Of
kind of
course.
count on, and she's been not only with my grandfather, but my dad, and then I mentioned I've lost friends, and she's always there to comfort me during those times, and that's what you want in a marriage. That's
And it is hard finding someone to date. And I'm
yeah.
thinking to myself, what has changed so drastically that people can't find some type of camaraderie? It's not even worth it. And then you're saying, well, air everything out on that first date. It's like, Lord, we're just going to be single people, and this nation is just going to be single from now on. So
All right, great show, and I guess until we do this again, it was great talking to you.
it's great talking to you. Enjoy your time in California, and I'll enjoy my time here
Enjoy
in Georgia.
Georgia. Yeah, I love it.
Bye, Luke.